Dude, I love glam. I love glam rock, man. Glam, slez, love it all, baby. It's rock and roll. I mean, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to you? We're talking good time rock and roll. Yeah, you look like your sister. You don't give a fuck about what anybody thinks. Glam rock, sleaze, rock and roll, baby. It lives in your heart and it lives in our souls. And it's where you take it and it's how you roll. It's all about a good time and there's people out there looking for it. So no matter where you go, that's where it is. And we're going to let it grow, baby. Rock and roll.
And that's how it is.
I was in middle school during the second half of the 1970s. So the bands of my day were King Crimson, Black Sabbath, David Bowie, Jethro Tull, and the like. However, I entered high school as an impressionable young kid right about the time the 80s glam scene was getting rolling and beginning to gain traction. And I was immediately hooked. The discovery of all these dolled up dudes playing in the style of the masters quickly drew me in, and to this day, it holds a soft spot in my heart and I can't get enough of it. I know the term hair metal can be quite divisive and it tends to get people all excited, or leave them cringing in disgust.
The 80s image to me is not just a look, it's a way of life. It's been a way of life for as long as I can remember. And even my wife-to-be has the coolest purple 80s haircut in the entire neighborhood.
Yeah, it's super funny. I mean, you hear the stories, you know? You hear the stories of back in the day that that centralized, like, everybody was like conglomerated
Everybody run to the Sunset Strip. That's where it's happening.
Yeah, like it was an LA conglomerate, like people from all around. You came from PA, you know, you came from Ohio, you know, all of a sudden you threw on something flashy, took off your farmer clothes.
You knew where it was. You knew where it was happening.
But it was all in one area, and that's not the case today.
Yeah, with the internet and everything.
No, it's not. I mean,
different animal.
The scene now, compared to the way it was, has perhaps gone the way of maybe like jazz and blues. You know, it was music that like was too good to just disappear, and it shrank down to maybe more of a like, I don't know. I've seen like a lot of young bands that are like actually the kids of guys who played the same music kind of thing. So I don't know if it's more in that direction. But it's definitely shrunk down so small that it's more of a genre. I think it's people who still want to put on their leather pants and get dressed up and look badass and go out and shake their head and have some fun and forget about their problems for a little while.
Unlike a lot of other rock and metal, it's full of really optimistic and fun lyrics. You know, you put on a Motley Crue record and you're instantly transported to a place where the drinks flow freely and you haven't got a care in the world. And for me, it's a whole package as well. It's about the look as well as the sound. If I go to a show, I'm watching the band. I'm not just listening to them. It's 50% of it having that great look and the great stage show as well.
There's 100% an active community still vying and living for this kind of music, especially in the UK. You tend to kind of find it more so, at least in my experience anyway, from mainland Europe. So Sweden obviously love their kind of hair metal, their sleaze, their glam. Germany are also quite prolific at it. Italy, Russia as well. Russia have a massive kind of glam and underground sleaze scene.
Well, here in the UK we have this thing called the new wave of classic rock, and it's virtually taken over everything over here. So for bands like us in the hair genre, it's much more difficult for us to be able to branch out because the demand just isn't there for it in the UK. So when we go out to Europe, we notice that the fan base is a lot younger, a lot more fresh-faced, and the audiences are just a lot larger. So I wouldn't say that hair metal's thriving in the UK. There is definitely an audience. It's small but mighty, but certainly in Europe, especially Scandinavia, is, in my opinion, where the scene is thriving the most.
I think there's a great scene for young bands at the moment, the best it's been in years. I think now more than ever there's a hunger for new bands to come out, and with the power of social media, it's easy to get your name and your music spread across the world, which I imagine would have been harder back in the day without having a major label backing or anything. Like, I know for us, like, we've managed to sell records to people like all over fucking Europe, America, and Japan and stuff, just from, seeing our video pop up online, or getting played on radio stations or whatever, or just coming across our page.
That's right. When I was a teenager in the early 2000s, I dreamed of the Sunset Strip and the 80s and the madness that was going on there. Dreamed of the revival of the metal of that time. By any large, there was a surge in Sweden when bands like Crash Diet and Crazy Legs began to appear. Nicky and I played together in my first band back then, and we were obsessed with the new wave of Swedish sleaze. Kids dressed up like hybrids of 80s glam and punk rockers, tons of hairspray and all that stuff. It was something really new and at the same time really familiar. We were hanging out and acting like idiots, but that was fun.
There's definitely a really cool scene happening once again for hair metal. It's pretty much primarily based out in Europe, Scandinavian countries, but all over Europe as well. There's great festivals to play. There's some great hair metal fans, and Europe seems to be where it's all happening nowadays. So we're, being from the UK, we're right in the center of all that stuff. So it's a great place to be, and some really awesome fans out in Europe right now.
I spent quite a lot of time in LA from 1985 to 1991, and I can tell you from experience that on the Sunset Strip, everything was tight. The jeans, the torn t-shirts, the hooks, and the drum fills. Clubs like Gazzari's, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Cat House, and the Troubadour were parked every night with fans looking to have fun and get a glimpse of the new up-and-coming hair metal acts. Here is a quick bit of history. Hair metal came to prominence in the early 80s with pop-influenced hooks and guitar riffs that borrowed heavily from the fashion and image of 70s glam rock. With visual elements lifted from bands like T-Rex, the New York Dolls, and David Bowie that melded heavier riffs, bands like Alice Cooper, Kiss, Poison, and Motley Crue were able to dominate the mid to late 80s, especially out west on the Sunset Strip. 1983 was the breakout year for heavy metal. Quiet Riot's Metal Health was the first heavy metal album to reach #1 on the Billboard charts, and it paved the way for many, many hair metal acts like Motley Crue, Rat, Quiet Riot, Twisted Sisters, Stryper, Bon Jovi, and Dokken.
In Los Angeles, there's a lot of action happening out there. There's a big, huge scene with Motley Crue and Poison, and of course some of the bands over in England that were considered right on the borderline of glam, glitter rock. There's quite a few of them, but off the top of my head, Hanoi Rocks was another one that was really big, Michael Monroe. We got a chance to tour with some of these bands too, but when we came to Los Angeles, the first thing we did was wanted to hang out and play some of those iconic venues like the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Roxy, Troubadour. Hung out every single night over at the Rainbow. Also did a bunch of shows and spent quality time with Ricky Rackman and Tie Me Down over at this place called the Cat House. It was fantastic. There was a great scene happening at that time. And it was full of life, and people were just excited about what the future was in store. You had MTV playing all the videos then, which I think was absolutely fantastic. And the scene was a scene that we all made on our own.
I like to prefer to think about the genre being created as a process of evolution. We like glam, we like classic metal. The hair was a thing left over from the punk days. Big hair, very cool. So it was just inevitable that eventually everything was going to fuse together and form this new genre, the glam metal soup. When Wrathchild first hit the road in 1980, we went through the same sort of problems that Kiss were having. People didn't get us. They didn't understand what we were trying to do. So we had to fight against ridicule, outrage. We had to prove our worth sort of thing. And this wasn't helped by the fact that the glam scene at that time was being ruled by very lukewarm post-classic era glam bands such as Silverwing, Rocks, Sacred Alien, Clovenhoof, to name a few. These bands thought glam was all about a little bit of spandex here, a little bit of diamante there, wearing the sister's or the girlfriend's clothes. There was no real stage shows, there was no real charisma being shown. But these bands were getting all the press attention. So to get any notice whatsoever, we had to go to war with these bands, and we really had to blow them out the water before the press would give us the time of day.
Just to get you off my mind. Every step I take brings me back to you. There's no getting through. Lost and broken, sitting by the phone. I can't wait to hear your voice. Can't wait to hear you say your heart is breaking and you can tell.
Not many metal fans kind of like adapt to, you know, it's one of those things which is a little bit more kind of left field for people, you know. If you're kind of in the process or you know, if you want to kind of doll yourself up, you're going to doll yourself up. If you're going to wear like cargo pants and fucking tank tops and scream about how much your mum hates you, then you're going to go down a completely different road. And, you know, this is the road that we've kind of found ourselves at.
When we started doing this stuff, the very first steps we took in 2009, we didn't know jack about Steel Panther. So it was actually where the influences came from were like the early warriors of that kind of music. It was Stripe, it was Doc and Red and Twisted Sister and stuff like that. Those were like the major influences that we had in the beginning and the ones that we still have. So I remember, I remember that I was into all that stuff like way earlier than you were. And I bought myself a Striper vinyl with Soldiers Under Command, and I was lying on my bed looking at the Soldiers Under Command vinyl cover and checking out like lyrics and outfits and stuff like that, and he came like into my room. I was like, I just thought you were like jacking off to Striper. I wasn't, but I easily could have. And today I can understand why.
I remind them that rock music was bigger than ever in the 80s. You know, it regularly charted in the top 10. And I don't think rock music's ever reached those heights that it did back then. And like I said, the look is just as important as the sound. You can play the best music ever, but you're not going to get very far if you look like a bunch of retired accountants, right? And I think the other thing about hair metal is it's accessible to a wide range of people by its very nature. You know, you don't need to be a guitar expert or have really niche musical tastes to enjoy it. It's full of melodies and fun lyrics that everyone can relate to. In a way, it's a bit like pop music. But I feel that's fundamentally a good thing, that it's just so accessible. Is it true metal? I don't know, but who cares?
There wasn't really that much of a scene around, at least not as far as we were concerned, being that we came from a small town, small in terms of like 200,000 inhabitants, and we genuinely thought that we were the only ones in all of Germany who were bringing back this style to life, right? Yeah. Which was in like 2010, so there were bands around already, even in our country.
There were few, compared to nowadays.
The Swiss scene, I would say, is kind of a calm scene. It's not a very big scene, but still, like when bands like Gotthard or Crocus from the older days plays, like everyone is going there, like the people from those days, from the older days, they go watch and see their bands from the older days. But there's not so many younger bands playing that kind of style of music.
I mean, we spend time looking on the internet, looking out for bands, like who could we like team up with to organize shows all over Germany, and we barely found any, actually.
No, it's really hard. It was really, really underground.
Yeah.
There have been some I dare say, major bands coming out of this whole thing in the last few years. I remember you showing me the first Kiss and Dynamite album, which was not really glam metal back at that time.
Power metal kind of
more
thing.
like power metal-ish. But they were like the first ones to really rise out of all the underground bands that were around at that time, in Germany at least. Right?
In terms of the actual support for like our kind of music genre, you tend to find it like dotted about in like loads of little festivals, loads of little seedy little clubs, like the Underworld in Camden, big love. Hard Rock Hell Sleaze. Hard Rock Hell do like a load of events for sleaze and glam, and they're kind of champions of it at the moment. You get like loads of different bands playing festivals like Call of the Wild Festival, Download as well. Our friends in Dirty Rose also played Download, and I think they were like one of the only kind of underground budding glam sleaze bands, like revival bands, that actually went down a storm. You know, you have got like a ton of other bands like Midnight City, our boys, Dirty Rose, Doomsday Outlaw, who else? Smoking Prophets, South of Salem, loads of bands. Yeah, the scene is generally really good in the
we can travel to all over Germany, go to a certain area that we've never been before, play a concert, and we'll know 10 or 20 of the people in the audience just because they are part of the scene, and we have talked to them before. Actually, this happens like pretty much every time. That's really cool.
And even if that is not the case, regardless of where you play, this is actually one thing that I love so much about this kind of music that we do, is there's at least one guy in the audience that will walk up to you being like, back in the day I used to listen to Motley Crue and Poison, you know, and I was so ashamed of myself. What the fuck are you ashamed about? But that's a different topic.
It's not serious. It's like a big show, and people want to see a show, and they don't really care about all the text. But still, we sing about love and broken hearts and about driving a car through the desert and having fun at night in a party place. So that didn't really change.
So there is a scene. The scene is small, but it's very much alive, I would say. Because there are, and everybody knows that. That's the point. The scene is small, and everybody knows that. So
it's kind of exclusive.
It's very exclusive. Yeah.
It's not meant to be, but that's how it just happens to be.
And that's why the people that are in this scene are pretty much die-hard fans, and people who organize concerts with those kinds of bands really work extremely hard to do everything right and to do everything good.
Well, it's double the work because we have to look good and play good. I mean, look at this hair, mad money.
At the end of the day, this is music that you can crank the volume up to 11 and just let it blow away the crap you've been dealing with all day, with tales of wine, women, and good times being the perfect antidote to the nonsense of the day. I think Poison's 1987 hit, Nothing But a Good Time, summed up the genre, the lifestyle, and the movement perfectly. It was, and still is, a much-needed distraction from reality and the promise of having nothing but a good time with your best buds.
And if us as artists can go out there and make records, and we can take you away from the doldrums of everyday experiences that you're going through in your life, i.e. trying to get find work, or you're struggling with your job, or health issues. We've done our gig as a musician. We leave those songs out there. At the end of the day, is the most important thing. And whether it's glam, sleaze, metal, new wave, old wave, tidal wave. Who cares who moves and navigates that? It's about getting the needle across and showing everybody out there that there's a way to get away from all the stuff that's happening out there and embrace the good, and that's metal and glam and rock and roll. And that's exactly what I do every single day.
I would say that music is a great way to escape reality. When you're down, you often listen or write down-tempo songs, ballads, and little darker lyrics and stuff. But then when you're excited, happy, etc., it's often mostly kick-ass rock and roll that picks you up. And I would say, in this world that we have to endure this pandemic piece of crap and other stuff, that's the only medicine we've got.
That's what I think. Right before the lockdown, all the shows that we were having, it was like a celebration. It was fun. Everybody was having a good time. I mean, some of our songs are serious, but most of them lead us all together, you know? So if I had to say anything lockdown, now we're coming gradually out of that, and so I'm sure it's going to return with a fever. But what I was feeling is people generally like to have, a good time with music that's kind of timeless, and I think it'll continue. It's just too much fun to stand in front of a great band and have a good time.
Without a doubt, I mean, this style of music has always been about escapism, and as far as Midnight City goes, that's what all our music is about. It's about leaving all your problems at home and coming out and having a great time. And I think, especially with everything that's been going on over the past couple of years with the COVID situation and even what's going on now, you turn on the news and it's just bad news after bad news after bad news. So I think nowadays, more than ever, I think people really need escapism, and you can just leave all your problems at home and just come out and have a good time, and that's what Midnight City and this whole genre of music has and always will be about.
The first one was about escaping the climate.
No, it's where is the climate? It's where is the storm?
Who?
This one is about how do you...
Who?
Who, you?
What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't even understand. So, rock and roll, baby. I mean...
Yeah, rock and roll.
Sure. For many, music is an outlet and an opportunity to recharge with a certain mood. You rightly said about this escape from the dark things. This is all very important. I think for most artists it will always be something like that too, either in the 80s or nowadays. People come to the show, they see a band doing an awesome show and playing great music, and it recharges your batteries, gives you a splash of emotions. As for me, bands with darker connotations have always been closer to me. Wasp, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses. This general message of this kind of music is more aggressive and rebellious.
Yeah, I mean, are we out there for a good time?
Of course.
I mean, that's what we're out there for. It's the only reason we're out there for a good time. Are you out there for a good time?
How does anybody get into rock and roll or glam rock or sleaze rock in the first place?
If you're gonna go out there and wear your sister's clothes, right? You're looking for a good time. I mean, there's no doubt about that. The fact of the matter is sometimes life sucks, and sometimes life can rock, and the only way it can rock is if you're out there having a good time, letting go of everything in your daily life, and yeah, it is an escape. I mean...
And what is the best way to escape with rock and roll? Get out to a goddamn show.
A wicked show.
Sure. For many, music is an outlet and an opportunity to recharge with a certain mood. You rightly said about this escape from the dark things. This is all very important. I think for most artists it will always be something like that too, either in the 80s or nowadays. People come to the show, they see a band doing an awesome show and playing great music, and it recharges your batteries, gives you a splash of emotions. As for me, bands with darker connotations have always been like closer to me. Wasp, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses. This general message of this kind of music is more aggressive and rebellious.
The matter is, you know, we write music about, yeah, all that stuff. I mean, sometimes there's, you know, I don't know, but most of the times, you know, it's about having a good time. It's about, you know, meeting somebody that's pretty cool, you know, I don't know, maybe they're really cool. And it's about, you know, just being happy, putting a smile on your face, right?
It's really good getting ready music. That's the best way I can describe it. So if I'm getting ready, I want to be listening to fucking Wasp and like Warrant, Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, you know, all the bands like that. Everything that just kind of makes me feel like, yeah, I want to look like them when I'm about to go out. And you know, if I'm having a shit day, I'll stick on like a fucking Wasp album or a Skid Row album, and I'll be like, yeah, cool. This is exactly the kind of thing that I need. It's just to get my headspace, you know, get my head clear, feel absolutely perfect, and just, you know, go out and rock it. It's the best kind of music for that, best kind of music for escapism.
Why else would you go out and entertain somebody looking dressed to the nines, snake print, 7-inch heels, looking like Ziggy Stardust? We're talking about going to a different place for, you know, yeah, like you said, the length of a record or a show. I don't know. Maybe it's the after show.
Yeah,
but
think about it. You don't want to go out to a rock show in your work clothes.
Nah, I couldn't even imagine going up there and you know, facing the crowd in some kind of a mundane
jeans and a t-shirt
fashion style. I think that at the end of the day, what we're trying to provoke here is we're trying to provoke a good time. Yeah, an escape.
If you're referring to like the escapism that's possible with this kind of music, I think it's boundless. It's endless. You can escape as deep as you want to in this kind of music. You could show up to a gig dressed any way you want. You can listen to so many different kinds of bands. You could leave your cell phone off because you're not going to hear it anyway. The band's too loud. You know, you don't go to a glam rock show and tell the band to turn down because they're too loud. You know. So in that regard, you're also faced with, hopefully, you know, and what should be included in a glam show is something to look at. You want to have something to look at. You want a band that is there to kind of David Lee Roth you, in a way.
The escape and the outlook that they need to actually think like, nah, shit's going to be all right, even if you are in a really bad place. That's generally kind of what the music, what this metal genre is about. Not so much about kind of hardships and heavy subjects. It's about just having fun, which is, you know, definitely what I use in, like, when we write music for Spiderbite.
We're trying to make you have something to look forward to, and that's rock and roll. And I think that's what rock and roll was born from, man. I mean, B.B. King, you know, Elvis, David Bowie. You name it. I mean, it's what it's always been about. I mean, what did you think it was about? This is what it's about, man. It's about rock and roll and having a good time. So let's do it, huh? Rock and roll, baby.
It's true in both ways, you know, for the audience and the artist as well. Because I feel super happy making music, and other people feel super happy listening to music, experiencing music, going to a concert and the band is comfortable playing the concert and everybody's having fun. And it doesn't really matter which kind of music you play. It's as long as you're having a good time.
The times that I've been in need of escapism and I've turned to this genre of music to help me with things I've lost count of, and I never thought I'd be in a position where people would listen to my music and feel the same way I do about listening to Motley Crue or Bon Jovi. But we have this unbelievably loyal fan base, and they talk to us and they reach out all the time, and they express the love for the band and how much our music means to them, and they talk about how it makes them reminisce to the old days when they were kids. And if the younger people, they've said, I want this at my wedding. We've got about 15 people now that have got Midnight City tattoos, whether it's the band's logo or it's lyrics from a song. Again, we've had them play our songs at weddings, things like that. And yeah, it's, you know, I've kind of been there, and I've got lyrics of my favourite bands tattooed on me as well, so it's kind of something that we do. And yeah, 100%, it provides an escapism like no other, because everything about the 80s was just the glam and the hair and the Sunset Strip. It was just kind of what we all dreamed. The ones that, like me, the ones that missed out on it because we're too young, we kind of dream of trying to live that life again, even though it's never going to be the same. But, you know, we've come to accept that this is as good as it gets.
This is not about parties and fun, but about confronting the cruelty of the world, defending your right to be yourself, to be free in your decisions and actions, about dramatic relationships and so on. Such themes are closer to traditional heavy metal and punk rock music, and these are the topics that we touch on in our music as well. Everyone goes through dark moments in life, and I think it's important to let the fans feel that they are not alone, even when you think that the whole world is against you. We will be on your side.
Obviously, yeah, you can get like heavier subjects, and you know, we have written about heavier subjects. Loads of bands write about heavy subjects, but if there's kind of like the core element of just the ability to have fun, to go out and party, and everyone says like, you know, you got to listen to heavy shit to properly fucking escape. And you know, there's been loads of fucking reviews and studies done saying like, if you like heavy music, you're going to be less angry. Like, yeah, no, that's totally right. But why not listen to metal music that is also like full of fun?
I am convinced that good music never dies, and while a number of artists and bands altered their sound and image to fit the times, others like Enuff's Enuff, Wrathchild, and Faster Pussycat, to name just a few, stayed the course. They persisted, and they struggled on with their original format, carrying the torch for a genre that was deeply entrenched in nostalgia, for both the generation that lived through it and the younger headbangers who missed out on the 80s entirely. Hair metal experienced a bit of a resurgence in and around the early 2000s, with a handful of new bands attempting to rekindle that original feel, and bands like The Darkness, Crash Diet, Steel Panther, and Reckless Love managed to gain a following by playing 80s-style glam music. But rather recently, it has begun rekindling and reignited a hair metal movement in places like Sweden, Europe, and the US.
One very noticeable difference between the old blood glam sleaze bands and the new blood glam sleaze bands is that of image. Back in the 80s, there was no internet, so if a band wanted to look cool, it had to create its own look. As there was no internet, creating its own look meant that we had to scour pet shops, DIY stores, sex shops, craft shops, rag markets. Anything that had anything we could turn into stage gear didn't go unturned. Today, bands have got it easy. The internet provides them with so many rock clothing outlets that even the ugliest of ducklings can be turned into a peacock by a simple click of a mouse button.
For a long time, hair metal was considered really unpopular and unfashionable, and it was kind of it was almost uncool to say that you like this type of music. But I think that the bands that initially brought it back were the Scandinavian bands, you know, bands like Heat and Crash Diet, Crazy Licks, Reckless Love, those type of bands that came around sort of around 2010. I mean, some of the bands came around a little bit earlier than that, but I think that was really when it started to kind of like turn the corner of actually being cool again, and you know, obviously it will never be mainstream again, but I think those guys were the first bands that really brought it back, and then almost like the floodgates opened, and a ton of other bands followed through with them, you know.
For me, by far the biggest band driving the revival of this music is Sweden's Crash Diet. They were the first band since the 90s playing some kind of hair metal or sleaze to get signed to a major label. And they really went for it with the looks and the sound. You know, they weren't afraid to have massive hair, which is really important. And I think they could have gone even further. The genre could have been even bigger now than it is. Perhaps if they got to complete their planned USA tour, which was sadly cut short by the death of the singer Dave Leppard. But I mean, their legacy is really still around today.
I guess it was in the early 2000s. In Sweden and Scandinavia as a whole, bands began to appear. They look as a basis aesthetics and musical techniques from metal and hard rock of 80s, adding modern production there. Crash Diet have definitely become a guiding star with their unrivaled Rest in Sleaze album, released in 2005. For me personally, this work became some kind of a revelation. At the same time, that everything coincided so that this album set off a chain reaction and everyone paid attention to other cool bands that appeared around the same time.
Olli Herman from Reckless Love, he's a pretty big celebrity here in Finland, and I don't think him or Reckless Love would ever have reached those heights if it wasn't for the time he was singing for Crash Diet.
Veins of Jenna, Babylon Bombs, Hardcore Superstar, Gemini 5, Dirty Penny, Crazy Legs, Sister, Baby Jane, Black Rain, and many other cool, awesome bands came out of the shadows. By the way, a lot of modern metal bands used elements of the 80s glam.
In recent memory, the band that I saw bring the old glam thing to right to the front of the stage, like a Broadway show, was Steel Panther. And I was so impressed by them because, first of all, they're all crack players playing a role, but they're doing it so well, and they kind of took the you know, I mean, it's a lot of what they do seems cliche, but it's cliche in a special way, you know, and so that was my first vision of like, oh my God, they're bringing this back. And then subsequently, friends of mine were on tour with bands like Motley Crue, and there was you know, stadiums full again. So I think that inspires some younger people to see that great music, especially if you're a player.
This genre is well influenced the development of metal culture. I'm sure that we will meet its echoes in modern bands and styles.
That's right. Escape the Fate, Fall in Reverse, Black Veil Brides, and my personal favorites, Blessed by a Broken Heart, and many others used parts of the image and some musical techniques from 80s. And I think it's really cool. Thus, they give a rebirth to all of this, and the fact that it works is another confirmation that the style of the 80s is iconic. Despite this, sleaze and hair bands never disappeared completely from the 80s. In the 90s, there were also many cool bands like Nasty Idols, Shotgun Messiah, Loud and Nasty, and so on.
I think the scene has been alive for the last decade or so, and is still active in the shadows though. In Sweden we have huge festivals such as Sweden Rock Festival and Skogsröjet. Clubs here in Scania that I'm aware of and have attended are stuff like KB, Mejeriet and Slakthuset.
I think absolutely there is an active scene around hair metal these days. Not necessarily centered around any country or geographical location. There's some great Facebook groups, for example. The New Wave of Hair Metal is one of my favorites. It's great in there. You can just meet people from all over the world who are into the same kind of music as you. But there's also some great bars and clubs on the ground. Decadence in London. It's a club night, and they've been running for years and years. They've built up a real scene and community around hair metal within London. You know, I've been down there, and I've seen the guys from Choir Boys, Crash Diet, even Black Veil Brides. Super cool. There's also places like Harry B. James in Stockholm, Paunchy Cats in Lichtenfels in Germany. And there's some really nice festivals around Europe too that focus on hair metal. I've seen ones in the UK, Sweden, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, everywhere really. You know, I think it's part of the broad appeal of hair metal that it has fans from all around the world, and I think that's amazing that it's still going strong like this.
Okay, so the aesthetic part of the whole glam revival, for me personally, really kind of came into effect when I first saw Riot and Everyone by Crash Diet. It looked like total kind of gutter punk trash. Everyone was kind of like in ripped clothes, ripped jeans, ripped fucking shirts. They had hair like up to here, makeup on. I thought, God, they look like absolutely disgusting, filthy bastards. I love them.
Well, growing up, especially where I came from this really small farming community in the northwest of England, and I was pretty much the only guy, along with my brother, that used to dress, you know, in the band shirts, the hair, the skinny jeans, all that sort of stuff. And we used to get so much crap from people. They'd want to kick our ass and think, you know, we were gay and all sorts of things like that. And it's just it's people that I think are insecure, because the truth is not everybody can pull off this look, unfortunately.
So that was kind of my introduction to like a revived glam aesthetic, I guess. Obviously, you know, I'd seen bands like Motley Crue and Poison and how kind of dolled up they made themselves. But I kind of, you know, I thought like, actually, how would you kind of make it a little bit more modern? That's when I saw Crash Diet. And also Veins of Jenna as well. Veins of Jenna kind of took that sleazy rock and roll element that you got with bands, for example, like Skid Row and Faster Pussycat, and just kind of made it more modern. You know, all they were in was just like sleeveless tops, ripped jeans, Converse, or like fucking Vans, Etnies, fucking bangles all the way up and down their arm, and they, you know, they kind of made it their own. That it was modern. It was kind of harking back a little bit towards like the earlier days of sleaze and glam, whilst also not looking totally outrageous, because I don't think many bands do want that. Now, if they're playing this kind of music, of course they want to kind of stand out there and look a little bit different and be different, but they don't actually they don't want to go like full Nikki Sixx and have like fucking padded, you know, shoulder pads out to here, looking like someone from the fucking Brothers of Destruction.
You know, it seems cliche, but a lot of these metal elitists that will shout things at you, the guys that kind of have like the whole Kerry King kind of vibe going on, they're the guys that can't pull this off. And it's not easy to have the confidence to be able to walk down a street, walk through the city, go into a bar where there's your normies people, and look like this. You've got to be very comfortable in your own skin. You've got to be confident to pull it off and carry it well. So it's not something I ever worry about. It doesn't keep me up at night, because I know the work I've put in behind the image, and I'm just as capable as anyone at playing things. So yeah, it's not something I've ever worried about.
Those days were like crazy, you know. I just went shopping into some second-hand store and got like fur coats and, you know, fake leather stuff, whatever I can get my hands on. The more we had, you know, it's like I at one concert I changed my clothes like every 2 or 3 songs, because I thought it was just like so important. And eventually, you know, at that point I didn't really understand what this all was about. You know, in the end, it's all about the music. But now we kind of know that it's like, just take your time. You know, make a plan. How do you want to look like? How do you want to sound like? Make this whole thing fit.
Work it out.
Put it on stage. And that's what those bands did back in the day, and that's what those bands, like the ones that you talked about, like Reckless Love and stuff like that, they did exactly that. It's like a whole fitting picture. And I think that is a lot that many other genres of metal can still learn from glam and hair metal.
People are used to judging everything by the corner, and many people think that if the image of the artist is bright, he's trying to hide some flaws in the music. It's very funny, but the psychology of some critics may be arranged in this way. and it's difficult for them to evaluate music objectively.
It is so, in your face, and it's loud and it's over the top. And I think sometimes a lot of critics think that because you have a big image that you're maybe covering up for the lack of musical talent you have, which obviously just isn't the case. But I mean, if you look back to, bands like Kiss or Motley Crue or Poison, there's a whole list of bands who came out with a really big image, and they are all judged, almost as if it was image over substance, which just isn't the case at all, because there's some incredible musicians in this genre of music, and also the songs. I mean, it's not easy to write hooks. Anybody can write a riff, anybody can write a metal song, but it's really not easy to write catchy, hooky songs. So there's an incredible amount of talent that goes behind this style of music, and the image is the icing on the cake.
We believe that the image of an artist is an addition, a way of self-expression, and an important element of the show. It works in concerts and in music videos. After all, we are entirely in favor of giving our listeners a cool performance and show. It's an important conceptual part. And it takes time for making and preparation. However, for us, music has always been a fundamental. So if you don't like what you see, we will not stop you. But sometimes you should pay attention, a little more attention, to the musical component, since you are going to criticize our band,
Not taking a band like Steel Panther serious, or not taking some of these glam bands serious, is something you do at your own risk. Because they don't want you to take them serious. I'll include myself. I spent a lifetime kind of entertaining people in this format, and we don't want you to take it too serious. That's the whole point. If I see somebody with the folded arm, I call them the folded arm crowd, I immediately start busting that up. Because yes, you may look at it and you might think it's cheeky, but if you actually listen to the music and listen to what everybody's doing, don't try that at home. That's really tough stuff. And if they don't respect it, we don't care. There's the door. Go back to your white shoes and whatever you're listening to made by a computer. But if you want to rock out with some real people, if you want to have fun, you want to sweat. I'm sweating right now talking about it. If you want to do that, then come out and see a show as soon as we're back out there.
My thoughts on the glam, sleaze, metal scene right now. It's a potpourri. It's all up in the air. New bands and old bands all working together as one. I used to play with a band called Missing Persons. We toured around the country. I was considered a new wave band. People dug it. Then I went out and toured with Steven Adler from Guns N' Roses, and that was nothing but appetite for destruction every single night. Those jag-ups were writing those songs when they were 20, 25 years old. So to go out there and reproduce them every day, it was quite a challenge. I think this whole scene has been changed quite a bit. Once there's you have social media, which we didn't have then before. So I still believe at the end of the day, it's about taking it to the streets. People want to hear their favorite bands. I think the scene is real strong right now. As much as we have bands like Queen and Judas Priest touring around the country, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, you got new bands that are out there on the horizon, Greta Van Fleet and Dirty Honey, Rival Sons, Vintage Trouble. It's a real nice scene. It's wide open for interpretation, and I just hope the people come out there and want to see the shows. And they show. If you look at the statistics right now, the concerts have been packed. People want to hear rock and roll, heavy metal, sleaze, rock, new wave, old wave, tidal wave. Who cares what you call it? It's all great music, and it's all for you guys to consume.
But there's enough going on with these new bands to keep us all interested. As long as the music's good and the look is good, it'll keep us interested. And I also think that when each new band comes onto the scene, they bring their own touch of something else, a little nuance of something different, a little fusion of a couple of things that may have already been going. The overall effect is, as each new band comes through, the genre gets fed and it gets improved, increased, it gets pushed further down the line. As long as there are bands being influenced by the bands of the past, I think the genre will flourish.
For me personally, this new wave of Swedish metal has always been a kind of a protest and statement about myself to this world. Listen to the album Rest in Sleaze by Crash Diet. Everything that I love in this music for is there. Outrageous and rebellious vibe, dirty sound, catchy big choruses, sing-alongs and so on. When you're a teenager looking for a place in this world, things like that hit you in your heart.
The cool thing about it now is it lives anywhere where there's some.
It's in your heart.
Kid that just wants to have a good time.
It's in the band that carries the torch from town to town in the places that are least suspected. Seriously, I mean, it's not always in some dive bar or dark alley. You know what I mean? When it comes down to, you know, where is the scene since the revival, and you know, if you want to call it that, I think it's just the thing is rock and roll will never die. Rock and roll will never die.
Today, bands like Kiss still manage to shock with amazing pyrotechnical displays. Alice Cooper still manages to shock with horror theatrics. Motley Crue managed to shock with clever drum mechanics. But what have the new glam sleaze bands got to offer as a stage show? All they've got to offer is a really good look and some damn good songs. Now, I personally think that sometimes that's all it takes to keep an audience enthralled. They're never going to be able to do what their predecessors did, but they can still reach a level of coolness that will keep the genre going for a long time to come.
At the end of the day, metal elitists are allowed their own decision and their own opinion about glam metal. You know, they're wrong, but they're allowed it. You know, if people want to shrug off a particular genre because of looks alone, it really does say a lot about them, not only as a person but as a music fan. Like, if you can't feel happy like expressing yourself wearing different stuff on stage and playing like happier sounding types of music with more melody than like full on fucking thrash metal, just fucking blast beats everywhere, then that's fine. You go and do that. You go and do that. We'll be here fucking slamming lines and fucking making cocktails and fucking shit puke out of our nose, you know. It's all about the fun. It's all about the fun. And you know, as well, if you can't get on with how sexy we all look, then it sucks to be you.